Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, August, for coming to present to us and talk about everything that you have going on.
Well, Theodore, it's an honor to be here with the Environmental Health Trust and you. I mean, you guys are doing the most amazing things for this very important mission of letting people know that this is a problem, right? There are so many issues surrounding technology that we just sort of dove into headfirst without really making sure that the devices and the technology in general was even safe. So, thank you for everything that you're doing. It's important and it's hard work.
Well, thank you. You're making a huge difference, and I want to tell everyone who you are and what you've been up to.
Thank you.
So, August
Thank you.
Brice is the founder of Tech Wellness, a digital well-being platform based on research-backed solutions for living more mindfully with technology, something that is a daily practice and a constant state of work for all of us, I imagine. You host a
Yes.
podcast, Thriving with Technology, featuring experts exploring technology's effect on our mind, our body, and our spirit, and sharing
And you
knowledge.
were on that podcast, if I can interrupt you. One of
Yeah,
our best podcasts was featuring Theodora. So please listen to that, where she breaks down all the important things that the Environmental Health Trust is doing and the legal action.
great. Yes, and thank you. That was great. Also, you are a part of the Digital Wellness Institute, which maybe you can
Yes,
interrupt
I
and
am.
briefly give me a few sentences about because I'm really excited about what's happening.
The Digital Wellness Institute is a probably it takes about 3 or 4 months to go through it. And once you do, you've learned so much about how technology is affecting us mind, body, and soul, which is what we also teach at Tech Wellness. But you're certified to be a digital wellness coach. And I do teach the course on electromagnetic fields. And I also weigh in on my personal experience of why electromagnetic fields affect me and also on what I've learned from not being able to embrace the technology as far as holding the phone because I was so sensitive to it, and what I learned about obsessions and all the privacy issues. I am also a guest about privacy as well at the Institute. But yeah, check it out. I can put a link to it if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do that at the end, and we'll send that
Okay,
out when we
perfect.
get the replay out.
Perfect.
And you also, which I did not know when I first met you, you are an award-winning journalist. And
I
can
thank
you
you.
talk to
Yes.
us about that? You began as a TV host and a producer, and you
Yes,
won
I
an Emmy.
did.
Yeah.
Yes, I've won an Emmy and been nominated for a couple. And I started really my career as an investigative journalist. And then I went into feature magazines where I got to talk about, new and exciting things. And both of those things have informed what we do at Tech Wellness. So we are science informed and we are very, very careful to make sure that we're not using any scare tactics, that we're not fear based, and that we're really communicating the truth about all the subjects that we talk about because this topic has become so exciting and a lot of people are jumping in and they want to talk about addictions and they want to talk about EMF and there's studies that we use to inform all of our blog posts and our videos. And so I'm really thrilled that that's the way that we approach it. And we approach it just like you said earlier with mindfulness because the statistics are showing and we also really look to research about how we're all using our phones. And Pew Research just released a study in March that said 85% of all of us go online every day. And a third of all of us Americans say that we're online constantly.
Yeah.
That's huge. That right there shows us that it's time to take a look and decide if what we're doing is really right for us. So I love technology. Want to make that really clear. Love it, use it, and I use it in the best way. I'm completely wired up here, so I'm feeling really good in this space because my computer's wired, my phone's wired. I can wire my cell phone, which we'll talk about later. And also, I have a practice of using my technology where every morning I don't ever look at my technology for an hour. So
Wow.
that gives me a chance to ground. I do some grounding, I do some meditation, I have coffee, I have a little journal that I write in. And it's just a nice way to remember the balance of the day ahead. Because once you jump into that phone, it's exciting. It's calling our names, right? And
Right.
distracting. So, anyway, that's how I like to
So
live my
how did
life,
you get
and I'm happy to
involved?
share it.
How did you
I
get
got
involved?
involved
Yeah,
in, well,
in this whole
about
issue,
30,
where did you,
yeah,
EMFs and all of this?
that was, yeah, it was very interesting. It wasn't really my choice, but about 35, 36 years ago, no, because it's my daughter's age, she was 2. So about 30 years ago, I got my first cell phone as a gift for Christmas, and it's all on video. This whole thing is recorded on video. And my
Wow,
husband goes, "Here, open it up, open it up." I take it out and I go, "What is it?" Because he said, it's a phone. It's a cellular phone," he said. And I said, "And it's not in the car?" Because you guys, way back then, our first cell phones were in cars, only in cars. And so
right,
this one was in a box, and I held it up, and it was a big chunky thing. And he said, "Call your mom." And I'm, "Oh, okay." Like, he was ready, he had it programmed in there. So I open it up, and just turning on the power button, I go, "Ooh," like that. I mean, I could feel the energy. And that was something that happened every time that I turned the phone on. And so I didn't realize what I was feeling, but that was obviously a sensitivity to electromagnetic fields. And I've done a lot of research and even attended an EHS conference in Europe a few years ago. And I have a podcast about it if people are interested, but I talk to a lot of people who are also electromagnetic hypersensitive, it's called. And the commonality for most people was either just way too much time on the phone. There was a young kid, he was 19 years old, and he said he ran his life from his phone. And then all of a sudden, his limbs started aching and he felt old and he just really couldn't even get up. He felt lethargic. And those are, common symptoms. And of course, most people do get this headache. And most people do feel a numbness or tingling from the energy itself. So for me, that actually happened as a result of a car accident I had a long time ago. And I was just, given a lot of medicine to get better, and it really affected my immune system. But most people do develop their electromagnetic hypersensitivity from either way too much exposure or a single very large exposure. In fact, a couple people at the seminar had either one worked for telecom, so that was he was climbing cell towers, so that's a pretty obvious connection. And another woman said that she was always great with technology. She was middle aged, and she said she never had a problem and she used it all the time. Nothing except then they got a new Wi Fi, and that Wi Fi was under her desk. And so all of a sudden, she was exposed to a lot of energy because, the closer you get to those antennas, the more exposure you have. And it was right under her desk. And she started having this continual headache. And she said that the way that she feels is that there's constantly like a big, huge semi truck driving through in her brain. So electromagnetic sensitivity can manifest in many ways, but what it did for me was keep me away from the wireless technology. And I learned how I could deal with it. And we got a Wi Fi, as most families did, many, many years ago. And I couldn't be in the room with the Wi Fi. And so my husband found a remote switch, and it's one of my favorite things to tell people about, and we have one at Tech Wellness. We offer solutions at Tech Wellness, whether it's information, products that I know have worked for me, ideas, consultations. Um, but one of my favorite things to do is give people a switch for their Wi-Fi, because you can plug your Wi-Fi in separately, and every night or any time that you're not using it, you can just power it off so that you're not exposed to that radiation when you don't even need to be, when you're not even trying to use your devices. So I was able to see, as I, had a different viewpoint of technology. I was able to see my friends and family really embrace the technology, and I was able to see these obsessions develop. And then when I started to sell AirTube headsets, I saw in the background, because it was my own website, I saw all of the information I could see about people who were coming to the site, and I was shocked at the privacy issues. So we talk about privacy, and how to protect yourself online from cybersecurity issues. And we talk about addictions and obsessions. And then we also talk about uh, really nice, easy tips that you can incorporate into your life to avoid EMF. And then we talk to people like you, the Environmental Health Trust, so that people can get involved and know that there's a place to turn if they would like to stand up for the right thing and maybe incorporate change in the world. And I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much, and for all you're doing, and also sharing our work and helping people find solutions. Because I know when I first learned about this issue, just figuring out like, okay, where do I start? How do I solve? First it's easy. Some of the first few things you can do, you don't need anything. You just need to know, keep that distance. But then you start to get
Yes,
into, well, wait a minute, I got this problem. I got to solve it,
mhm,
and um,
exactly, Theodore, exactly. Yes. And so that's where, it was really wonderful. About 10 years ago, we went to build our home. And so knowing about my EMF sensitivity, all of the wires in our home are coated with metal. And so we don't
right,
have dirty electricity and we don't have electric fields, and that's awesome. And so we don't need the Stetzer filters, but it's not that I don't think that they would work, but I would only recommend a building biologist help you install them and help you decipher whether you need them. And then, of course, we don't have any wireless in the home. So, and that was just such a fun project because I move in and I've got a Nest thermostat and I'm walking around and I'm, oh, what's that? EMF. Wait, we're in this no EMF home and we've got this, Nest thermostat.
how did
So,
that sneak in there?
because that's almost anything you buy these days, your TV, your washer, your dryer,
Mhm,
the dishwasher, everyone thinks you want wireless in it. Like I did not get a new Roomba for my house, the little robot vacuum,
mhm,
because the new ones are wirelessly equipped. Why?
right.
Why do I need that? But so I like to exercise my ability not to have to buy those things. And so we found this older thermostat and it works great. I mean, it's not as beautiful as a Nest, but it does what it's supposed to do, adjust the heat and cool. So it works. And it's just sets right, on top of where the Nest did, and there's no electromagnetic fields coming from it. So
Yeah,
it's a
we
it's a
we had a
continual
similar
journey,
situation.
right?
We had to get the programmable thermostat. The HVAC person had to go searching all around.
Right.
Why would you not want the Wi-Fi? I was like, I don't
Yeah.
want it. I just want the old one. They had to go, find it in some catalog and order it special.
That's
But,
right. That's right.
it shouldn't have to be this hard, but actually we're at that point where you have to sort of get informed and take one step at a time, do what you can, and
Mhm.
you don't have to do it all at once, unless you need to because you're getting sick from it, then you do. But
Exactly. That's such a good point.
you
Right.
know
And I think I love to hear stories from my community about the difference between how they felt before they took out the wireless and after.
Mhm.
And even the little tweaks like turning off their Wi Fi when the kids nap. The kids are sleeping so much better. I'm sleeping so much better. I just feel better. And of course, you do. It's just another source of pollution that you just don't need in your environment. That's how I've always liked to talk about it. It's like another toxin in my environment that I know it's there and I know that it's in products, but I just don't want to subject my body to it. And it's easy for me because I can feel it, but that's how I like to share it with people. If you don't use chemicals in your home, if you try to stay away from pesticides, if you're becoming mindful of the additives in your food, then you probably feel better if you're mindful about the electromagnetic fields in your environment as well. And I know we talked about this on our podcast that you and I did together. The best thing you can do, get a meter, right?
Right,
An
that's right.
RF meter. Walk around your house and discover the things that you never even thought would even come with a wireless opportunity. You might not even be using them, with their wireless, but they're still sending out a signal, which is unfortunate. But then you find them and then you decide how you're going to change that. We have a solar system and it came with three wireless antennas.
Mhm.
And not up on the actual panels. The panels actually increased our safety because it protects us from other people in the neighborhood who have boosters on their, Wi-Fi systems in their homes that were actually, raining a little bit of EMF on our rooftop. So the metal actually served to be protective, which was great. And we didn't install wireless that had any microprocessors or any panels that had microprocessors or any wireless capability. But then you go into the inverter, which is the piece that takes all that nice
Mhm.
energy and converts it into electricity, AC electricity for your home. And that had three antennas in it. So I had to get an electrician to come over because I stood there in front of my meter and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is what's happening. And this is where this additional EMF that I'm noticing in the house is coming from. And so anyway, he came and opened up the unit and found the little antennas, and we just unscrewed them and left them inside the metal enclosure. It's work. It's worth
It's
it.
so important to have a way to measure, to know and
Mhm.
find those things. I think I maybe probably told you on the podcast how when I first learned about this, I stopped using my cell phone and started using my home cordless phone, completely
Oh,
not
right,
aware.
right. You said that. Yes,
And it was like, I
yes.
finally got that meter and sat down at my desk and went, wait, what's wrong? What is there a
Mhm.
nuclear bomb? It was like the meter was going crazy. It was the
Yeah.
cordless phone, but I just didn't know enough. There's so much to know, and
Mhm.
it's sort of like you start with one nugget and go to the next.
Right,
And once
right.
I had
It,
that meter, I was able to learn more. So for everyone on the call, please do put questions in if you have questions. And August, why don't you tell us about like what tips and tricks you think are great for people to know about, to get started with, and then we'll go into some more challenging situations in the home and
okay,
how to
and
solve
so,
them.
and we're talking about EMF and not the balance, to
We can
the
talk about it all.
addiction
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about addiction for a
avoidance.
minute. Were you how is that going?
Well, you know what? It's so interesting because if you talk to a mom who's got a kid that's always on technology, you might hear them say something like, "Oh, they're addicted." And the American Psychological Association actually does not call any addiction, gaming addiction, social media addiction, any addiction that has to do with technology in America is not classified as an addiction.
Hmm.
Fortunately, the World Health Organization does call gaming addiction an addiction. And the reason that this is important, and even to be in what they call the diagnostic manual, the DSM for the American Psychological Association, the important thing about that is that it opens up more resources to help people who are addicted. And it also helps to get insurance for people who have what looks like an addiction. And so a lot of the researchers I've talked to about addiction, when it comes to addictions revolving around technology, will call it either maladaptive consumption, or they'll say that someone is exhibiting addictive like behaviors. So I think some of us might wonder if we're addicted. And so our original internet addiction expert on techwellness.com was Dr. Kimberly Young. And she's the woman who actually coined the term internet addiction way back in the 90s. And way back in the 90s, she did research and she took it to the APA and said, hey, we need to look at this. This is another addiction. That was, in the 90s, 30 years ago, and it still hasn't been classified. But she created what's the gold standard of internet addiction tests that everyone uses today, or something very similar to it. But it is the gold standard of tests. And she gave us an 8-point quiz that's on the website. And then she also gave us little tips and ideas that we can incorporate into our lives if it turns out that we put too many yeses down. So it really helps you decide whether there's an addiction or an obsession, and it helps to decide what to do with it. But basically, what Kimberly said was, if it interferes with your day to day normal life, your activity on technology, whether you're shopping or looking at social media or just texting all day, um, if it interferes with your relationships, if it interferes with your work or your schoolwork, then it's very close. It's your alert that you're close to becoming addicted, even if you're not addicted, if you just have what's called maladaptive consumption. So this, if we accept that it's just maladaptive consumption, we're just using it too much, there are things that happen when we're on our phones and when we're using technology. And there's two ways to look at it in the brain. One is about gray matter and how it's actually in this place in our brain. It's called the reward center, the part that gets excited, and it gets excited by technology through things like seeing likes, through getting texts, through the um, it's called intermittent rewards that you get,
Right.
like the continuous scroll. So you're on Instagram scrolling, and you never know what you're going to see. It's so exciting. So that's called an intermittent reward. And your notifications on your phone, you don't know when you're going to get one, and then it bings or you see it light up, and so that's an intermittent reward. Well, it turns out that in the reward system of our brains, people who show addictive like qualities, who use their phones a lot, who use technology a lot, who game a lot, who watch social media a lot, they've scanned brains of people who have those kinds of behaviors, and they have less gray matter in their reward center. And I think less of anything in the brain you can probably imagine isn't so great, but less gray matter in the reward center is an issue because then it takes more dopamine. And we've heard a lot about dopamine lately, right? There's a new book about dopamine. Human Lab talks a lot about dopamine. I hear a lot about dopamine. And dopamine is this feel good, um, some people call it a neurotransmitter. Apparently, the correct term is a neuroadapter, but it's a chemical that our brains release whenever we're seeking a reward and we're about to get it, like motivated to do something fabulous, like winning is a great example of a huge dopamine flood into our brains. So rewards like the intermittent rewards that we were just talking about on the cell phone, the scrolling, the notifications, the never know what you're going to get. Unfortunately, pornography, that's a stimulation on its own. All of those things give us hits of dopamine,
That's right.
and they make us feel good until they don't anymore. And the reason that it stops feeling good is because we all have a baseline level of dopamine, all of us do. And we're all gifted with one level of dopamine or another. And dopamine does a lot of great things. It helps with our attention, it helps with our memories, it controls movement. So we need this dopamine. And we know that we get hits of it with rewards, and we can get rewards from other things like, a great meal, a meal that you love, and especially if you love food. And I sense that you do. Right? I love food. It's, oh man, just thinking about a piece of banana cream pie, it's like, yes. So anyway, that can also trigger dopamine. But when we've triggered too much of this dopamine, it takes away from our baseline level. And then when our baseline level of dopamine is reduced, we get depressed. And I think that that's what you hear a lot of people saying that use technology too much. They have a depression, they have a sadness. I read research about loneliness, and then I read about anxiety. And anxiety is a whole nother thing that happens in the brain, and that's cortisol. And studies have shown that once we have this wonderful stimulation and we're so excited to be near our phone, and then we put the phone down and we have to do something else, that people who really are obsessed with their phones and really enjoy their technology, at about 15 minutes away, and that's like the longest they can be away, they release so much cortisol. And cortisol is that fight or flight chemical that our bodies produce, and that causes that anxious feeling. And so they have this anxious feeling because they're away from their phones. So that's sort of like the basic overview of what happens in our brains and the chemicals that we release when we're just looking at technology in an unbalanced way. And you can kind of equate it to how some people eat in an unbalanced way, or maybe drink in an unbalanced way, or even exercise too much in an unbalanced way. Um, if we don't have that balance, we can go down the road of ultimately not feeling so great. And so that's why
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk about being balanced with technology, about keeping your dopamine level at a nice, consistent level, and then getting those peaks from other things. You can get it, guess what? You can get it from chocolate.
Well,
You know,
it's we're being depleted from the
yeah,
dopamine and the natural chemical balance that we've had. It's depleting us because it's just too much. It's over
too
arousal,
much.
too much stimulation,
Exactly.
and it's no different than drugs. I mean, it's this similar process, and not there are
Mhm.
differences, of course, than drug addiction, but there are a lot of similarities also in terms of the brain.
Y-
And I think the
And you know
challenge
what?
is that, good.
Go ahead. No, no, no.
I would
You
say,
you
how do
finish, and
we,
I'll bring it.
now that I think a lot of people know this, especially parents of teenagers, but
Yes.
the difference is that everyone's doing it, right? So
Mhm.
when we say, I'm a therapist, so, and I've worked with clients with drug addictions, and in what that's what it is it impacting your life and how, your work and school and so forth. Except, and I remember when clients first came in with addiction to the internet. This is before Wi-Fi. I remember it. I'd have some
Yeah.
clients that couldn't get off looking at things on the internet. It was just, and I said, "Oh, this is really interesting. This is like this whole new world." I just want to hop back and then talk to you about some more things. But I'm just thinking about how, when you brought that up, how now it is impacting our work, our school, everything, except it's normal. Some of the way that we're being impacted
It's
is
become normalized.
normal,
Yeah.
and we have to shift.
True.
We're forgetting what we know. We have to remember what we know, because I feel like we all know what we need to do here. And we know these things aren't good for us, even when everyone's doing it.
And
School
you're
too.
so right to compare it to, yeah. And then I know it's so hard. And that's what Kimberly first said in her, which that she first noticed, that the very things that children were given, computers, to encourage learning, were the very things that were taking away from it. And
Right.
that's what you're talking about. It's just become so confusing. Um, but what you said about the fact that it's drug addictions are slightly different.
Mhm.
Dr. Ofer Terrell, who is a social media researcher and looked at the scans of brains of people who were
Mhm.
showing addictive like behaviors with social media, saw that the difference was in the control center of the brain, it was completely intact, versus drug addictions. The control center also has had some injury
Mm.
from the drug and alcohol
Mhm.
addiction. So the really good news about what we can do is knowing that control center is intact. We can exercise our ability to not stimulate our dopamine as much as
Mhm.
we are, to just take it to a detox. And you know what, a great detox to start with, and I love like a 15, seriously, just a 15-minute unplug on a daily basis that you decide to do on your own. You say, hey, I'm in charge of this phone. I'm putting it away. I'm putting it out of sight, out of mind for 15 minutes, and I'm going to focus on me. It's an amazing chance to see what it's like without the technology calling your name, because it does. It sort of calls calls you, right? Theodora, come look at me. Um, so that can lead to an even longer detox. And then the idea is to get into a balanced lifestyle where you look at technology when you want to. You, if you're into social media, you say, you know what, in my life, I think that I want to look at social media half an hour every day. I just want to. That's how much time I want to spend. And I want to work out half an hour every day. And then you just try it and you stay with it and you develop that balance that just feels so much better.
Right. And shifting back to EMFs, even with
Yes.
all the
Yes.
changes, like, I guess I'm going to jump in two directions, but we don't
Sure.
have Wi-Fi in our home either, and we don't have cell phones actually in our home, except connected with the wire, which I know you're going to
Perfect.
share
Yes.
the
Yes.
attachment that you
Yes.
have. And
Love
yet
it.
we're
Yes.
still in that place of, and I have children and a family, and it's really challenging to get off. And I work virtually all the time, and with this big issue, which is like, could take over your whole life 500 times. I'm sure everyone on the call knows that too, because you're all working so hard. in your communities. It never ends, but it's really a challenge that we're all dealing with
As parents.
as parents, as people.
Mhm. Yeah, but no, seriously, as
Yeah,
parents,
thanks.
it's really hard to navigate this. And I'm writing a book. I'm really excited about it. But one of the people that I talk about in my book is a woman who has older kids in their late 20s and then has a 6-year-old. And that 6-year-old became addicted to gaming. So
Mhm.
much so that she's a single mom working every day, has a business that she loves, brings her child with her and the iPad or the tablet so he can play, so he can have fun. And then, a year later, I had been talking to her the whole time because she would come. She's a physical trainer, and she would come to my home, and I would see them together, and I talk about how much time he was spending online, and she said, I have no choice. This is just how it is. And this is all of his friends are online. Well, it ended up that she didn't have a choice to not let him go online because he became absolutely addicted. Here's a
Wow.
7-year-old that stays up 24 hours a day, that forgets to go to the bathroom, that forgets to eat, that just his whole life he's obsessed with his gaming console and his tablets. And so she does the 30-day reset that Victoria Dunkley talks about in How
Mhm.
to Reset Your Child's Brain.
Mhm.
And we went through it, and I talked to Victoria about it, and she said, really, it's going to be a lifetime commitment now. But I think because he was so young, it's really worked out great for them. So the first 3 or 4 days, she had to not go to work. She had to be with him constantly.
Wow.
And then she had to taper her work schedule because parenting with technology is really a commitment. It really is. And that's what she said in the end. She said, hey, you know what? I started letting the phone be the babysitter, and I forgot really how hard it is to be a mom. It
Mm.
was easy to hand him things. It's hard to be the intentional mom that I was with my older kids. I played outside with them every day. I'd take them on bike rides. I had a part-time job. She said that she really had to change up her life to accommodate the technology that's part of their lives now. So it's really a challenge, and I
Right.
I admire parents these days. It's so much, just like you said, it's us too that we have to. And by knowing this and by just becoming mindful of knowing that there was this big study at the University of Texas that showed that when people who enjoyed their cell phones, and even those that just used them on a regular basis, when the phone was on their desk and turned over, it took up a certain amount of brain space. I mean, you only have so much cognitive space, and it was taking out part of it. And then they took that same cell phone and put it in different places. Well, it turned out that in order for it not to be distracting, it had to be in another room, in a safe place, turned off and put away, like hidden. You hide it yourself, but it couldn't be in sight because then it was in mind. And so now that we know this, and this was a big study of 1,200
Yeah, I remember that
students,
study. That was so important,
right? Really
adding
good
to
study.
our understanding.
Mhm. And so that we know that they're distracting, then we just sort of model our behavior and model our lives so that we understand, hey, yeah, this phone is distracting. I'm not going to have it at dinner. I'm not having it at breakfast. When I'm driving and I've got someone in the car, I'm going to put the phone away because I know if I don't, I'm just like everybody else. Sure. you know, I can, I'll talk on the phone. Why not multitask? So anyway, I think it's just really living mindfully to do our best with the technology because technology is great. And look what we're doing right now. This is so great.
Right. I think, I'm sure you know about this new word that's being used, phoneliness.
Yes, yes,
Phoneliness, loneliness,
yeah,
but phoneliness. You're with
yes,
your
yes,
phone, you think you're connecting,
right,
but you're more and more lonely
right.
with all that time with the phone. So let's talk
And the
about,
people around you too with the phoniness, screen snubbing. Same, right?
I
So you're
know,
on your phone, you're lonely, and then you're snubbing the people that you love.
I know. And I see it with young kids now where they're being pushed on the swing. Like, I remember those days. I mean, I have older teenagers now, but I remember those days of, uh, going to the park and pushing my kids and just looking at them and having that time. But the phone is sneaking in between now, and it's hard. Um, Everyone's doing it, and we need to just reset. We need a complete reset. We need to take control of technology. We can do it, but it has to be intentional.
And,
So
and
tell
if
me
anyone
about,
really does feel the 30 days is the great way to do it. 30 days, it's been proven by the sciences on all
you
sides,
can
whether they're
calm
looking at the
down off of
dopamine.
it.
Yeah, you just take a break, you get away, you come back with a whole new perspective, and then you do have power over your phone instead of your
Yeah.
phone having power over you. So if you feel that you're there, it's a great way to
So tell me
change
how,
things.
tell me about hooking. People are always asking us, how do you,
Yes, how to what?
how do we reduce wireless radiation in our home? What are some ways that we can do this that are just solution practical, like show me how? What do I need to do?
Okay. Okay, so we wanted to make it really easy because you can get your whole home wired, and that can run, you call the cable company and then you call the AV company or maybe an electrician, and they draw a cable to every room in your home. So that's an option. And that's even if you do have that option, or if you already have wire internet access points in your home that look like a plug, but instead it fits the Ethernet cable into it, you still will need the adapters that then take your phone and your computers and allow you to turn off the wireless function.
One of
So
the things we're
anyway,
asking for is for phones to have a hard switch. It shouldn't be so hard to turn off the antennas. You should just be able to turn off that antenna with one press.
yes,
Making it this
I
hard.
agree.
For me to turn
Go
off my phone
environmental
takes
health
me like
trust.
5 minutes.
Yes. Isn't that the truth? And then if you go to, so here is my phone, and see that it says Ethernet. Do you see that line that says Ethernet? Right here. So on most phones, when you are on airplane mode, you don't see the Ethernet line. And that means that I can go online right now, I can watch a video, I can do everything except text or make a phone call. But I can use Signal, which is a messaging app. So I can still text people, I can quote unquote FaceTime on Signal, even though it's not real FaceTime, it's through their messaging app. So I can do basically anything. I can go online. I can visit Tech Wellness on my phone, and I can go on Instagram. How about that? That's really great, isn't it? So we can go on Instagram, and there I am on Instagram. I can scroll through Instagram. I can get my little dopamine hit, see how many likes I got. And anyway, this is all with the phone on airplane mode.
So
It's
it's
amazing, and
not
there's no
transmitting.
energy coming from here.
There's no antenna
Not transmitting.
transmitting.
Zero. Zero, zero. And so if you go here and you go to the control center, that's another way to look at settings. And I just want to give people a little tip right here. When you see these grayed out, as sometimes you do, have you ever noticed if you look at your control center and the Wi-Fi is gray and it's kind of like a whitish gray? This is dark, so this is at black, but sometimes it becomes white gray. If you see that, it's still sending out signal. And so I think I can even, sometimes it'll go that way. Nope, it's not happening now. But sometimes I see it and I'm like, I'm very alarmed, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, so it's black, but if it had a white circle around it, it's sending signal and you don't even know it because you think you're on airplane mode.
This is
So
a
always
problem that
double
happens with
check.
these phones. They've changed how they operate. That's why you have to be checking it and turning it off. All
Right.
the antennas,
You have
always
to,
check that they're
you
all off.
always, right. And so they're all off now, but I'm still able to go online, and it starts with this adapter.
Now
So
show
this
us the other
adapter,
end. Show us the Ethernet too, for people who might not know about what an Ethernet is.
here we go. So I'm going to unplug it now and show you. This is the adapter, and it's a lightning adapter for iPhone. And then there are USB-C adapters that look like this, and these are for Android phones or for computers. So there are different adapters for different devices because that's how the tech industry does it, right? We can't have just one adapter. So this is for lightning, and it connects to an Ethernet cable. So this is the Ethernet cable, and this is a double shielded cable, and that it's shielded because it's got the gold plates on the, what this is called an RJ45, and it can plug directly into your Ethernet access point in your home. If you happen to have a plug that's in your room, and we have lots of them because we built our home that way, and some older homes had them too. Remember when we first got internet and it came right to the house? There was a plug in the room, and it can accommodate, some of them can accommodate this RJ45 cable. So this is the Ethernet cable, and it brings the internet that your cable company brings to your home. This cable brings it to your devices through adapters. So you need both. And what we do is we have a kit that can take your current Wi-Fi, because most of us do have a Wi-Fi, and it can take that Wi-Fi and bring the next piece. This is called, oh, I'm gonna have to unplug it, but this is called the switch. This also comes in our Wi-Fi kit. So what it's doing here is one of these cables is bringing the Ethernet, say it's from your Wi-Fi, because you do have a plug on the back of your Wi-Fi, or from your modem, which is what we recommend. We recommend that you call the cable company and you get a modem, which brings the internet into your home, and you get one that does not have Wi-Fi in it, because a lot of times they have Wi-Fi in it and you can't turn them off. So I recommend getting a modem, and if you DM me, or if you go on my website, I can show you the names of those modems for the different companies that most of those companies work with.
And just for
so
clarity
anyway,
for people, this is very important moment, figuring out
yes,
the modem.
yes,
And the company is
yes,
probably going to tell you that, don't worry, we can just go in and turn it off. And you really, normally,
yes,
I found now with the companies, at least on the East Coast, you need to buy your own modem that's compatible
yes,
with your company. So if you have
yes,
Comcast or whatever it is,
yes,
you make sure,
yes,
and you can call them up. They're not going to offer this because they really don't want to do it. They want
yes.
you to rent
They don't want
their
to.
modem.
That's right.
Then you get, like she said, the compatible one, and
Yes.
then you can hook it up. So tell us about this port, which I used to call it a splitter, and the tech folks were like, don't call it a splitter. It's not a splitter, but
It
it's
is.
like a splitter.
It's a splitter. You know what people call this? There's
Called it-
several names. Some people call this a router. Some
Yep,
people they do. Some
yep.
people call it a switch, and some
It's
people call it a
routing.
splitter. And I think it's fine. Yeah, it's routing the signal.
It's
It's splitting
right.
the signal to several devices, and it's switching the signal. So yeah, you can call it what you want,
Yep.
but it comes in the kit too. And so one cable is bringing it from the modem to the switch, and then the other cables are letting me connect to other devices. So I can connect with this little one, I can connect to 4 other devices. So I can connect my phone, I can connect my computer, I can connect my tablet, I can connect another computer. So I can do 4 different devices at once through the magic of this switch splitter router. And so if I needed one, I could also hook up a Wi-Fi to this. I could take one of these cables and connect it to the Wi-Fi, and then the Wi-Fi, as you know, plugs into an outlet as well. And so you can use the kill switch to turn the Wi-Fi off when you're not using it. Also, if you have a Wi-Fi, we offer 75-foot cables. So you can plug one of these Ethernet cables into the back of your Wi-Fi, because you will have these ports. These are Ethernet ports, and they are what these Ethernet cables plug into. And so your Wi-Fi has a couple of these ports, at least. Some of them have 3 or 4 ports. And so you can plug one of the cables into your port, a 75-foot long one, and then that would go into the switch, and at least you'll be far away from your Wi-Fi. That's the beauty of that. And if you don't want to call the cable company and get the modem, if you're fine with a Wi-Fi in your home and you're fine with turning it off when you're not using it, it's another option. It's the quickest option to get your device not to have to use wireless, which is great. And then you have to remember, you turn off Bluetooth on your computer and laptop, you turn off the Wi-Fi, and you turn off the cell signal, and you enjoy a wired environment.
Right, right. And so someone just wrote that their cat, they got a measuring device, and there are pet tags that use RF, so pet owners can keep track of their pets. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a
The
cat that's
tags,
been
yeah,
visiting them, and it had
okay.
a
A chip?
tile, and I encountered this tile not on a pet, but I couldn't believe it either. Um, Sydney says the Safe and Sound Pro 2 measured spikes of over 1 million.
I'm sure it
Wow.
did. Yes.
I
Isn't that
mean,
crazy?
it's
I'm so
crazy.
glad that someone brought this up. This is so important
This is so
because
important.
there's privacy issues, there's EMF issues, and I think they just did Apple did their tags, which are like tiles, and in a partnership with Louis Vuitton or Hermes or somebody, and got designer tags. And it's like, oh my goodness, if people only knew really what they were exposing themselves to.
Right.
In fact, I love to do videos, so I'm going to do a video, and we'll just show people what's happening with their tiles and their Apple tags that can help them find everything. And the bad part about the tile is Amazon has created a new global radio frequency network using a new part of the spectrum. So if you're using an Amazon product, you're exposed to a new section of the RF spectrum that you've never been exposed to. And it's a huge privacy issue because you're tracking other people's tiles, and that, like the cat. So the person who, if she was on Amazon, she would be notifying the person who had the cat through her own network. And Amazon's taking a little bit of everyone's Wi-Fi is what they're doing,
Right.
and they're using it. It's amazing what's happening. So that's another. I'm so glad that this got brought up because not only is it
No.
dangerous with EMF, and I did want to mention something when we were talking about brain changes. Um, there was a study done last year in Israel, and I spoke to Kevlar Devson is her name, and we talked about how one of the main things that she found were changes in the brain, and she called it cell death. And she saw the changes in the brain just from the cell phone radiation. And she said she saw the rats exhibit anxiety whenever the phones were brought towards the cage.
Hmm.
That's what she told me. It's incredible. So we have the effects mentally on the brain, and then we have the physical effects on the brain from the EMF.
That's what brought me into this issue was reading the research on, it was actually the animal research that's been done, very controlled studies where they actually have, cut open the brain and looked at the brain and found brain cell death, damage to the brain from cell phones. This one, actually several studies done by the Israeli team, Dr.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
I mean, that was like, I read that and I was like, wait a minute. If a cell phone is
Yeah.
harming these mice, I mean, they were these rats prenatally, and killing
Right.
brain cells
Right.
from being near the cage, not even touching their heads. What about our kids? What about,
Exactly.
pregnant women? What are we
Right.
doing here? And we haven't even measured. I mean, we're not going to, they're not going to experiment on people in that way, and they shouldn't. But
Yeah.
here we are experimenting on an entire population with no controls.
And that's why I love the idea of just getting away from it, being completely wired. Because, there are a lot of people that have come up with things like, you say pregnancy, and I think of the cloths that I've seen women ask for on my site, and we don't recommend them, and we don't sell them because you forget that you're being exposed everywhere. So just because your tummy might not be exposed, you're still exposed if you're holding that phone. And we're not really sure of how the biological intake of the EMF actually happens, right? I mean, we could be getting it on our arms, and that could be affecting the baby. We're not sure if just having the phone right on top of your your pregnant tummy is affecting the baby, or if just even the ambient radiation is affecting the baby that your body's receiving. So I really think the safest thing is to wire up and step away when
Right.
you have wireless on.
And of course,
I
everything
think
we're
we
talking about requires people being informed and also having
Mhm.
the financial means to do it. And this is an
Yes.
environmental justice issue because there are so many people who
You're
aren't
so
able
right.
to
Yes.
even know about the issue, much
Mhm,
less to
mhm.
buy the devices. And although some things, are still low cost, it's another $45, it's another $65, and then um, to maintain that. And that's why we have to change policy. We have to force companies to make safer products. And we really need our government
Yes.
to make that happen, because
Yes.
the companies are not going to do it. They are not sitting there thinking
No.
about how they can be helpful to us or make easy
No.
switches on our devices. And that's really the next step. I always think about it like, it's your home, do your changes,
Yes.
and then let's change this
Yes.
policy, because everyone needs to be able to make these changes. Our kids deserve it in schools. And what about our
Yes.
workers? Workers are being tracked.
Exactly.
They are being
Right. And
tracked as part of their job
oh, it's so crazy. It's so
with
out of
wireless
hand. It
devices.
really is. Yes, exactly. And with the, we heard what Apple can do. They can go into our camera roll and see all of our pictures. Not that they decided yes to do that because they had so much pushback, but to realize that they actually can do that. It's just amazing. And then the new tracking on the 15, where it's always on or it remains on for a very long period of time. Apple announces themselves, and I'm waiting to meet someone who has downloaded 15 because I'm not going to. Um, but apparently the
What is this? I
15,
don't know anything about it.
the operating system 15, which is the next
Oh,
update for
okay.
iPhone,
Mhm.
Apple has said that they're really happy to report that even when the phone is completely off for a long amount of time, depending on the battery, how much battery you have, your phone is still trackable, meaning that it must be sending out some EMF, some electromagnetic field. So it can be in touch in case you lose it. So it's sending out a Bluetooth signal even when it is completely powered off, which is why I'm so happy I have a Faraday. That's the only thing that can actually block this phone that's turned off, yet still very proud of the fact that it's sending out signal. It's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, and then there's the location, and
Mhm. Yeah,
this
and the
is
only thing that helps with that is turning it off, turning off the settings, and we do have
right.
tutorials on our site to get the right settings. But also a Faraday helps with that because it actually blocks GPS, which is great.
Mm.
You know, yeah,
So
it really works.
tell me what other tutorials you have on your site. So there's how to
Ooh,
turn things off, how to plug things in.
a
What
lot
are
of
some other
privacy ideas
tips
too.
people?
Well, one thing that I really love people to know is it's called your airdrop name, but basically it's the name of your phone. And it's becoming so important as you're talking about privacy these days because when you go and you're anywhere and it says you see devices and you see, oh, look at the car. It says to connect with, oh, in this restaurant. And then you
Oh,
see
right.
names of people.
Right.
That's, those are the people that are around you. And
Oh,
so if you use your real name, you're letting people that you may not want to know you know your name. So I recommend changing what's called your airdrop name, and I walk people through it. It's very easy, but there are so many settings on our phones that it can be overwhelming. And so I show you how to change your name, and I give you some fun ideas like stealthy or whoever you want to be. Or I'm not telling you it can be your name. And so that way, when your Bluetooth is on and it's telling every passenger on the plane who you are, they won't exactly know who you are. So we have settings like that, and a privacy guide that's full of different kinds of settings. And then of course we have a tutorial that I don't know if you watched on how to set up your wired system working with your Wi-Fi. It's about an
no,
8-minute
no, that's
video.
great. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And so we do step by step. On the blog, we talk about the modems and how important they are. Though some people, they just want to jump right in and try it without
Right.
having to do much. And that's why we say, well, at least hardwire your Wi-Fi. So you can take that signal coming from your Wi-Fi, make sure that you can turn your Wi-Fi off and on, and then you can have distance from the Wi-Fi at the very least. But
Right.
I'm
The
with
first
you.
thing I did was turn it off at night. And when I
Yes, good.
finally just was like, I'm going to go all the way and
Yes.
put the wires in, which seemed like one could never do it. I mean, I couldn't even imagine doing it.
Yes.
Then I did it and I was like, why didn't I do this
Ah,
sooner? This like all it
it's
took.
amazing.
I can do this. Why didn't I do it sooner? And we
Yes.
slept better.
Yes, and it's
Like,
faster.
it's
The
faster.
greatest thing is my husband is like the ultimate techie, and he loves it because it's more reliable, it's faster. Now I do have to, and I want to be transparent about the iPhone adapters. I feel like iPhone wants to prevent me from using an adapter because every iPhone adapter I've tried, it works and then it doesn't work, and then it
Yeah.
works and then it doesn't work.
Mhm.
And so I encourage people to get a couple and then switch them out. It's so interesting because the one I'm using right now that you saw, Ethernet, earlier, it wasn't working.
Mhm.
And so what I do is I unplug it, I turn it upside down, I turn it around, I turn the phone off and on, and then it works. But it's, to me, it's worth it. It's worth that little extra bit of time to be on Ethernet because then it is, the signal's so strong and so fast. Like a YouTube video downloads instantly. And there's none
Yeah.
of this. You're talking to someone, you go, my signal's strong. You know for sure that it is.
I know I just spent yesterday, I've got all kinds of adapters for my laptop and I move around the house depending on what's going on. And every time, sometimes when I plug in, it's challenging. But the other day, it took me like 20 minutes. I don't want to dissuade anyone from using an adapter, but I thought, you
Yes.
know what, this is
Yes.
worth it. I was like, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. This is better than being sick, you know?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It's
It
like
is.
there's just some things that have to be
That are
done.
worth it.
So,
Right. It's
and
true. And
I'm
sometimes,
thankful, you know,
mhm,
I figured it out. Sometimes when you plug it in, it takes time for the device, the new device that it doesn't recognize, it hasn't seen for a while, to sort of connect.
mhm,
Sometimes the adapters
exactly.
just stop working. And that's a problem.
Yes.
And the companies really should fix that. There should be a way, it shouldn't be this hard. But
I
thankfully we
have you
have people
noticed
like
that
you
with your
helping us.
computer? Yes. That, well, and have you noticed with your computer, it's pretty consistent. It's just with your phone. And I've noticed that on Android's phones, it connects better and stays longer.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
I really do think it's something happening with iOS, and I just wish that they would make it easy. So, but yeah, know that if you
Yeah.
have an Android phone, it feels like it's easier. And then some people talk about not being able to charge their phones while they are using them, which of course you don't want to do. And oh, you wanted
You
to
don't
talk
wanna
about
be
them on
using a charging phone, but everyone
yeah,
seems to do
you
that.
do
I
not.
don't use a phone really,
Yes.
but yeah.
Yeah, but there's one option for an adapter that you charge and use access and have access to the Ethernet at the same time. So that's an option. And then of course, we have this wonderful grounded charging station that's fabulous. If in fact you ever see someone using their phone while it's charging, for sure, let them know that they're being exposed to massive electrical fields. It's just how it is because no one has invented a grounded charging station, but we actually have one that Sean Cranish, a building biologist, has gone in and taken something that he bought on Amazon and switched it around so that all of the Ethernet ports are grounded. So then you can use your
Hmm.
technology, and even if you're just using it to offline, even if you're just using it on airplane mode, you'll still have those
Right.
electric fields if your charger is not grounded. So it's really important.
That's really important.
Oh, and
You also have
you were talking
the
about
electrical cord, the
yes,
electrical,
yeah,
power strip.
yeah,
I thank you.
yes,
I use that because that way, and this is like a great tip, is to have things on a power strip where you can just turn it off, because then you don't have those electrical fields like, downstairs in our room where we have a projector instead of a TV. If we watch a movie, we just project
yes,
through the computer.
and cool,
And
yeah,
I have all that, so that way it's not on. And I have one in my daughter's bedroom so that she doesn't have that on either, because there aren't any other electrical systems. We don't want to have that electricity in the bedroom, and that way
not at all.
just
And
turn it
it's
off.
thank you for bringing that up because that is a grounded power strip too. And
Mhm.
most of the power strips that we buy, that we probably have around our house are not grounded. And like you said, those electric fields can be really damaging. And that's what's happening if they're not grounded. So there are a lot of complicated things, but they're worth it. And we
They
try to make
are,
it
they
easy,
are. And one
you know,
step at a time,
by
right?
just doing step by step. Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
when you're talking about being around your house and about how, we all can sort of become unbalanced with our use, if you do things like you only charge in one location in your entire home and everyone puts their phones there every night, that's just one way of gaining a little bit of space where phones aren't in bedrooms, which is not really good for kids, even in your bedroom. I have a story, a blog post about um, the bedroom and technology. And I have a statistic in there that is just so crazy about sex that I couldn't even believe that anybody even studied it. But people who will actually look at their phones while they're having sex, crazy. That's an actual thing that somebody researched.
Yeah,
So a phone should not be in the bedroom, period. Like it's just so distracting, and the blue light and the EMF, so
I know.
anyway, it's
And so
crazy.
many kids, and I have college kids, they're charging by their heads. So they're
Yes.
not only is it on, but it's being
Oh,
charged right by their head so they can catch it in the morning. They're not being informed. They have to be informed. We have to get education, like how to use technology into our schools so that kids at young ages, because I really believe if it's not done young, we're going to have a
yes.
hard road, hard road to
Yeah,
hoe. And we've just got
I
to
think you're right.
educate them so that they just like we do, we wash the dishes, all the things that we do, it should just be, it's something we do. It's like hygiene, technology hygiene. How do we
That's exactly it. Tech hygiene.
digital tech
Absolutely.
hygiene?
And
Yeah.
and the more that we're informed, like you said, so we do know from the same study from Kevlar Dempson, and I'll put a link. Anyway, she was studying melatonin, and she was studying how much melatonin was zapped just by the EMF. And so that's another thing. If you're sleeping with it next to your head, you're ridding your body of one of the most important hormones that we make, melatonin. That it helps us with our circadian rhythms, our metabolism. There's so many things that they're finding out about melatonin, and even as a dopamine interaction, melatonin is
Right.
so important. And we are zapping it if we're sleeping with the phone next to our head. Oh my goodness.
I
Yeah,
know,
that's
but
got to stop.
that's
Bad phone
normal,
hygiene.
normal world. That's
Yeah,
where we are. We've got a lot of work to do, but I'm in it to win it. You've been in it
absolutely.
for
That's what I
some
love about
years.
you. That's why I'm following you. Absolutely. Yes.
Wow. So
So
can you give us your website again and how people can
sure.
connect with you? And we do have
Absolutely.
some of your adapters on our page on products as well. But tell us your website.
It's Tech Wellness, TechWellness, techandwellness combined.com. And I'm on Instagram, and I offer little bite-sized tips every other day on just one little change you can make and incorporate into your life to make your life feel better with technology. And so I encourage people to follow me on Instagram. And there's the website. Love to have you visit. And yeah, check out all the things that you offer on or recommend on Environmental Health Trust. You have a lot of great ideas. So thank you for including us.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I hope that people watching can, take that step. It's one step at a time and make those changes and, live healthier and happier and more balanced. So
Absolutely. It feels
thank you
so
so
much
much
better.
for joining
It
us,
does.
August.
Thank you, Theodora. Be well.
Bye.